So, as you all know, today we have with us Miss Misbah Reshi, one of the two law students from India who received the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship to pursue their postgraduate studies in the University of Oxford. In this webinar, Misbah will take us through her journey to Rhodes and also discuss about the issues that exist when it comes to legal education for Muslim students. Before starting with the webinar, there are some housekeeping rules that I would like to inform you about. Firstly, this webinar will be conducted in two sessions. First, dealing with the topic of the Rhodes Scholarship, and the second, dealing with the issue of access to legal education for Muslims. Secondly, during the course of the webinar, I request all of you to put your audio on mute and to keep videos off so that there is no unnecessary interference with the bandwidth. And finally, we shall take your questions at the end of the webinar once we are done with both the sessions. So I guess that should be all. And without further ado, let's move to Misbah. Hi, Misbah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi Anam, thank you. Assalamu alaikum to you and
Walaikum
everybody.
assalam. Yeah, so Misbah, could you please start by giving us a glimpse into your background?
Okay, firstly, I just want to say thank you for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be speaking at this platform, specifically because I've been following the work that ALEM has been doing for a while now, and it's absolutely wonderful. I just want to congratulate all of you. It's very heartwarming to see young law students and lawyers creating awareness about legal education and just helping increase representation. So I'm really happy that this work is getting done, and I'm really happy to be speaking here. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Misbah. I am from Kashmir, but I grew up in Delhi. I did all my education here in Delhi. I studied philosophy from St. Stephen's College, and I'm currently doing my LLB from Campus Law Center, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi.
Thank you, Misbah. That's really interesting. So, as you just said that you graduated with a philosophy honors from St. Stephen's, why did you decide to take up law?
Okay, so being a Kashmiri, I was always aware of injustices, ones that existed structurally and operated systematically. As I grew up and started understanding um, things around me, and also about my own identity, I think I realized that law was one of the most useful tools to bring about social change. I got into philosophy because my sister was already studying that, and I was absolutely fascinated by the subject. And I knew that I always had the option of studying law after I would study philosophy, and I got the opportunity to study philosophy at St. Stephen's College, which is a great faculty and it's a great department. So when I got the opportunity, I went there, and then I always knew I would be studying law after that. And luckily, when I was at Stephens, I interned with a few places that were already doing legal work. So I just sort of got more interested in the field, and I sort of knew that this is something that I wanted to do. Luckily, my interest sort of fell in line with what I anyway thought was true in terms of law being really important for social change. And all of that sort of came together, and I started doing law.
That's really an interesting story, Misbah. So, during this entire journey, when exactly did the motivation to apply for Rhodes strike you?
Okay, so since I was at Stephens, I always knew about the Rhodes Scholarship because almost every year I think there is a Rhodes Scholar from Stephens. So when I was in my first year at Stephens, there was a Rhodes Scholar. So I knew about the scholarship, and I knew that it's a great way to study at Oxford in case funding is a big problem, and generally as well because of the kind of opportunities that the scholarship allows you to explore. So I always knew somewhere in my head that I would be applying for this scholarship, but because I knew I wanted to study law before I did anything outside India, I sort of put that on hold. And I studied in Stephens and I went to law fac. And then when I finished my second year, as I actually started thinking about what am I going to do now once I graduate, I started looking up things, and then I was talking to a few people, and then I realized that there's an age limit for the Rhodes Scholarship. So this was the only time that I could apply because you have to be less than 24 to be able to apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. So because of that, I was sort of compelled to apply this year, which is right after my second year. And in June, which is when the applications open, is when I actually formally started applying for the scholarship. And by July, I submitted, which is anyway the deadline, I submitted my application. And luckily, I had been doing research work and internships in my field of interest anyway. So all of that already existed for me to sort of just work on that and build my resume and my application.
Okay, Ms. Ba, so I think you've already set the base, right, to plunge deep into the topic now, and I guess everyone is waiting for this. So, Ms. Ba, please tell us what exactly the entire journey has been like. When did you start preparing? You already put light on that, but when do you think a person should start preparing? What goes into the application process? What happens afterwards till the very end of the entire process?
Okay, so before I start talking about the scholarship and specifically my journey, I just want to put out a bit of a disclaimer, which is that, of course, I'm going to be talking about my journey and how I work to get the scholarship, but that's not necessarily the kind of things that everybody needs to do. I think what's really good about the scholarship is that it allows everybody to explore their own identity, their own uniqueness, and allows space for that. So I think just keep that in mind, and maybe this would be a good point for everybody to start working and thinking, but also make sure that everybody, whoever's thinking of applying, does more research into it and looks up whatever's available online about the scholarship, about Oxford University. Also, secondly, whatever I say in terms of how to apply or even after don't necessarily reflect the views of the Rhodes Trust or the Rhodes India Secretariat. This is how I went about doing my application, and it's not necessarily how everybody needs to do it or is the official stance. So, okay, now just directly start talking about it. So, the Rhodes Scholarship is a 2 year fully funded scholarship that allows you to study a postgraduate course at a University of Oxford only. And what when you're thinking about the Rhodes Scholarship, there are a few things that you need to do before you start applying. So, a few checks that you'll have to do in order to see how to apply, what to do before you formally start applying. So, this would be firstly, and this is something that's anyway available on their website, so you can always look that up to get more information on. But firstly, would be to see whether you're eligible to apply or not. So, this would be one, whether you're an Indian citizen or not, and um, through this constituency of the roads that you'll be applying. But secondly, also age. And this is something that I didn't know about, which is why I'm stressing on it more. So make sure that before you apply, you check the age criteria and whether you fit into that criteria as well. So if you're doing a 5 year LLB course, you would have completed your 4th year and you would be going into your 5th is when you would be applying, I think. And if you're in the 3 year law course, it would be after you complete your 2nd year in May and before you start your final year is when you will be applying for this. So it's always good to check that before you apply. Secondly, this is something that everybody will have to check as well, is whether the course that you're applying for is something that falls under the Rhodes Scholarship. So the Rhodes does not give a scholarship for each and every course that's available. But as a law student, I think most of the courses that are taught within the Faculty of Law fall under the Rhodes Scholarship. But if there's something that you want to explore beyond that, it would be good to check whether that course falls under the scholarship guidelines. So it's good to check that as well and see what are the courses that are up for the scholarship. So these are the two sort of formal things you'll have to check before you start the process. Then the two main things that you'll have to work on in the June-July period, which is your statement of purpose and your reference letter. So there's one statement of purpose that you have to submit, which is supposed to be, I think, uh, 900 or 1,000 words. I'm not sure. You'll have to check that once. And then that you have to give 6 reference letters. And usually the way to go about reference letters is to make sure that they're more academic in nature. They're by people who you've worked with or who know you personally. It does not matter whether these are famous people or big names. That's not important. What is important is that they reflect on your they're able to reflect on who you are and are able to recommend you from their own personal assessment. So these are the two things that you'll have to see, whether you have 6 people who will be able to write a reference letter for you, and then how you're going to be writing a statement of purpose. So it's within the June to July month that you have to apply for the scholarship. That's when your application's open, but obviously it's good if you start preparing for it before, if you know that you'll be applying for the Rhodes Scholarship. Most of the information is available on their website. So if there's any confusion, you can always clarify over there, but make sure that these are the things that you have ready. You'll also need your official transcripts, which I think everybody should have, and you'll have to upload them as well, which is just normal. That happens in every application process. So in June, in the first stage, which is the first application stage, happens in June, July. This is where you submit your official transcripts. You give the email IDs of your referees who will be sending in their reference letter. So these are 6 referees you'll have to details you'll have to enter, and then you'll have to give in your resume as well, and then your statement of purpose. So the two things that I think everybody will actually have to work on would be their statement of purpose and their resume. And this again, everybody has their own sort of identity, journey, and whatever they've done. So it's good to take a good amount of time to think about what you want to do, why you want to do that, and then write about it in your statement of purpose. And this is where you'll have to do a lot of thinking, and just take as much time as you need, write a bunch of drafts, get them, send it to your friends, family, people who you know might be able to critique it well, and just make sure that you spend a good amount of time on your statement of purpose, because that's sort of the core to the selection committee really knowing who you are, and then everything else sort of acts as a supplement to that. Usually after the application, the first stage of the application, there are interview rounds. Now, usually what happens is that there are 2 interview rounds, and so there's the first round which has a smaller panel, and then there's a second final interview, and between the first and the final, there's a social engagement that happens. So if you make it to the first interview round, then you'll have your interview, and then people get shortlisted from that, go to the social engagement, and after that there's a final interview. Now this year, because of the pandemic, everything happened online, so we had 3 interview rounds. Now I don't know how things are going to progress in 2021. If restrictions continue, it might go online again, it might not. So I really don't know. But at least for my year, we had 3 interview rounds. So, and we didn't have any social engagement. So there was the first round, and a bunch of people were shortlisted for that. And then um, a few people got shortlisted for the second round, after which there was a smaller list that qualified for the final interview round. And as we progressed, the number of people on the panel also increased and became more diverse in their sort of in their disciplines. So it's not necessary that if you're a law student, you'll be interviewed by lawyers. You'll have an interdisciplinary panel. Although your first might be more technical, the rounds that come after that, it's more about who you are and your work, something that will be assessed by an interdisciplinary panel. So it's always good to keep that in mind when you're prepping. Now, something that's extremely important to look at when you're applying for the Rhodes Scholarship is um, who is a Rhodes Scholar, right? So on the website, they've given this sort of criteria on how they judge who is going to be a Rhodes Scholar. And this is something that is extremely important. And I feel like everybody needs to sort of ensure that you keep this in mind throughout the application process, even when you're either writing your SOP or even when you're sitting for your interview, to keep these in mind and sort of reflect it and show them that you do have these characteristics. So what it says is that they're looking for young students with outstanding intellect, character, leadership, and commitment to service. What this means is that one, there is literary and scholastic attainments that you are able to showcase. And this is, I'm just reading it off the website. Secondly, that energy to use one's talents to the full use, as demonstrated by masteries in any extracurricular activities, sports, theater, dance, music, etc. Third is truth, courage, devotion to duty, kindliness, unselfishness. And then fourth is moral force of character, instincts to lead. So these are 4 criteria that are judged independently, and it's good to sort of think of these as individual characteristics that you must sort of have in order to show that you are an ideal fit to be a Rhodes Scholar. Now, there's no specific way in which I can say that, okay, this is what you need to do in order to be a Rhodes Scholar, but it's good to reflect on whatever you've done and who you are and see how that sort of fits into the things that they're looking for, and how you feel like you have each of these characteristics in the work that you've done and in the work that you even want to do. So, and this is something that I think is really important and should be kept in mind throughout the process, as I've already said. Um, Now comes the interview stage. If you qualify from the application round, then you go to the interview stage. So the basic idea of the interview is they just, I mean, the panelists want to get to know you, the work that you've already done from your, and what, and it's something that they'll have access to through your resume and your statement of purpose, and what is it that drives you. And if you're confident about yourself and your work, honestly, it'll seem like a conversation that you're having with some very well renowned scholars and accomplished academicians, which is always a great learning experience. If you're not very confident, then it might just get a little difficult, but it'll still be a great learning experience. Um, it's always good to know everything that you and it's always good to know everything about what you've at least said you know about. So it's not like they'll ask you something completely random that you've anyway not said you know about. But if there's something that you've said you're passionate about, or something that you've worked a lot on, then they do want to see how much you know that, what are your thoughts on it, and things like that. So it's always good to sort of have all of that information in one place. Now, how I went about it is that I spent most of my time just sort of reading over legal developments that were happening in the work that I'd done. So in my internships, whatever work that I had done, or through my other sort of research publications or a documentation of reports, what had happened after I had worked on them. So what was anything that had happened recently in the run up to my interview in that stage, and just looking at that was one thing that I did. And secondly, what I also did was I had a lot of conversations about my work with people around me. And this is not necessary that it's not necessary that you talk to people who are lawyers or law students. In fact, a lot of my conversations were just with my dad and my siblings, where we would just sit at home and talk about a lot of things that I'd done. And they would just ask me questions and try to work on what I'd said. And, we had this sort of to and fro where they just try to understand what I was saying. Also, it was also good because I wasn't going to have a law panel that was going to judge me. So having a group of people who weren't coming from a law background sort of also helped explain my work to them. I also did a lot of self reflecting, which is just placing my work in a larger context, just thinking about why it's important, what have I actually read on the work that I've done, what did I learn from it, and just generally whatever ideas were coming in my head, I was also like noting them down. So I had a bunch of notes, and this is something not a lot of people, so everybody has their own way of working. So it was easy for me to just note down all my reflections, and as I would think about it, I would add to that. But it totally depends on however you want to work. I remember I was talking to someone who had told me that sometimes you just have ideas when you're going to bed, and or when you've just woken up and suddenly like an argument crosses your mind. So he was like, I really regretted not noting it down, because I would have to really keep it stored in my head to till later. And so keeping that in mind, I noted everything down, so that if there was something that would just randomly pop in my head, I'd have a space to sort of jot it down and reflect on it later as well. Um, and honestly, there's nothing that I can say is important to prep. I mean, I was thinking about what does justice mean to me, because I'd also studied philosophy. So things ranging from, okay, what is my idea of justice, to, okay, how has the court responded to COVID-19, or what are the policies that have been implemented, what are my thoughts on that. So honestly, the range is really wide, but whatever interests you, whatever, however you feel your prep is going to go, just let it go in that direction, and just like work your way through that. You can do mock interviews if you feel that's a good way to prep. Not a lot of people do mock interviews because sometimes you just get stuck in your head and that sort of overwhelms you. But if mocks help you prepare generally, then you can do it with a friend or someone at home or a professor. It's very subjective, but that is an option as well. Generally, I mean, even if you're not applying for the Rhodes Scholarship, it's always good to read the newspaper or just be in touch with news and know what's happening. And it's always good to keep yourself updated on not just legal developments. I mean, it's very important as law students to know what's happening and follow portals that sort of keep updating on that, but otherwise also what's happening around us and what are your thoughts on it. So it's not just knowing factually what's happening, but what do you take away from it? Why is it important for you to why is that issue important? What are we supposed to do about it? So just those thoughts around it are also something that you should think about. And if there's something that you've written in your resume, if there's something you've written in your statement of purpose, it's good to think about those things properly and having full-fledged thoughts on it, because that's what they have in front of them and they will assess you on that. So that's how you sort of go about your interviews. I think that's more or less it. I think one thing that would be really important for everybody to do throughout the application process is to really think. I think we often get really caught up in prep in a way that we're just working, we're just reading, we're writing, but we don't pause and think. And um, after one point for me, I was like, I can't read more. I mean, I've read, I think, enough for me to know what's happening, but what do I do beyond this? It was actually just sitting with every material that I had with me and thinking about it. Why is this important? What is my opinion on it? What am I to do with it? So just thinking about those things is really important, and just relating that to your work or work you've done, and evolving your thoughts. I think that's really important throughout the process. I think that's about it about the scholarship, but happy to take questions on it, or maybe we can do that later once we.
Right, Misbah. So I think you've covered almost all the ground here. But so you talked about SOPs. So generally, it's of course considered as the game changer. So what would you say were your to-dos or do's and don'ts while you were drafting your SOP? And what made it stand out?
Hmm. I don't know what made it stand out, but I think one thing I didn't do at all was to read anyone else's statement of purpose. I think a lot of people do that, which is where they ask for statement of purpose that people have written and sort of and use that. I think one thing would be to not do that at all. I mean, I didn't do that because I felt like I didn't want my thoughts to get influenced by how people have written their own statement of purpose. The When you start applying for the scholarship, they give you an official guide that past scholars have developed, and they sort of put down how everybody went about their process. And one thing that came out very strongly was that everybody just used whatever they felt was the right way to write their SOP. So there's no correct way to go about it. You can be as creative, as radical as you want when you write your statement of purpose. I think what they are looking for is uniqueness, and you have to make sure that you have that, and that can only happen when you take time to introspect and think about it on your own, and then just write about it. And that's what I think. You're going to have a lot of versions of your statement of purpose, and that's okay, but it's always good to just start writing, and then as you go about it, just have a bunch of versions and show it to your friends and family, and just evolve it with time.
Okay, Misbah. Another thing that while you are planning to apply for the Rhodes Scholarship, how important is it to have a mentor who has been somewhere related to the Rhodes Scholarship? And does that really bring some good impact on your scholarship? And what can those people do who do
Hmm.
not really have a mentor in this entire process?
Hmm. I think honestly, it really depends again. I think it's always good to know people who've done the scholarship, and luckily, the Rhodes Trust itself allows you this access to a portal where you can interact with past scholars. So there's a chain that goes on where you can put in your thoughts and a past scholar replies. And so that way, access to information is really easy, and you can interact directly with past scholars, and they give. And honestly, everyone is so helpful. They respond instantly and give very detailed responses. So, in case there are some people who, even if there are people who individually know scholars, it doesn't matter, because otherwise also you have access to a place where people are responding to you. So but I also know people who had absolutely no idea about the scholarship, who didn't know people at all who've gotten the scholarship. I don't think it matters that much. And even if, and I think because it, in some places it did, they've created this portal where you can interact with scholars, so you have access to information anyway.
Right, Misbah. So, Misbah, when you were talking about the Rhodes Scholarship and the requisite characteristics a Rhodes Scholar should have, you talked about various facets. So, I think if there is one question that always pops up in the heads of Rhodes aspirants, it's that how does one balance academics, extracurriculars, internships, legal research, etc.? Or do you really need to balance it at all? Or, you can just go on to prioritize one thing over the other. What do you say about that?
Okay, so I know it's really difficult to do a bunch of things, especially in law school, because generally law school is very hectic. But I think that's what it is, right? That's what makes you a Rhodes Scholar, because you've been able to do all of these things simultaneously, and you've been able to do all these things well. Uh, you just have to, honestly, it's about planning and having set goals for yourself, and ensuring that you know what you want to do. So if you have, say, one semester where you feel the subjects are relatively easier, maybe take up something that is easier. If you think maybe doing a moot is more tough, so do it in a semester where your subjects are easier. But if you feel that maybe doing a research project is easier, then maybe take it in a semester where your subjects are tougher. So I think it's just prioritizing in that sense, where you have to just sort of see how you plan your semesters. And I think if you plan it way ahead and well in advance, it always helps. And you're able to do that. And if you, honestly, if you really like doing those things, it doesn't feel that much of a task. So um, I was involved in the legal aid society of my college very actively. um, uh, about, because then it'll just seem less of a burden when you do it along with academics.
Ms. Buck, would you please repeat yourself a little? We lost you for 1 minute.
I can't hear you.
Hello, am I audible?
You're not audible.
Hello? Um, I guess there is some problem on Misbah's side then. Am I still not audible to you, Misbah?
I can't hear you.
We are asking Misbah to rejoin, so please wait for a moment. Guys, please be patient for another 2 minutes. She's rejoining.
Hello.
Hello? Is it audible now?
Yeah. I still can't hear you. Wait. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah. Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. So there was some problem on your side. No problem.
Yeah.
So we
Um,
lost you when you were
yeah.
answering that question.
Yeah.
Would you mind repeating the answer? Should I
Okay.
repeat the
Where?
question?
Yeah. I think.
Okay, okay, okay. So I was asking you about how can one balance co-curriculars
Mm,
with academics, or is there even
mm,
a need to balance those things?
mm,
Can you just prioritize academics over
mm,
co-curriculars and stuff
mm.
like that?
Yeah. Okay. So as I was saying that this is exactly what they're looking for in a Rhodes Scholar, the fact that you're able to balance all of those things and are able to excel in each of the activities that you do participate in. I think that's exactly what they're looking for. And it does get a little hectic. But I think the crux of it is if you are interested and passionate about the work that you're doing, that doesn't feel like that much of a task. So um, you have to ensure that you stay, that you get good marks, that you stay on top of your class in academics. That's sort of the one thing that stays consistent throughout your law school or whatever you do before that. But what you do very importantly otherwise is to see what are the extracurricular activities, what are the internships or what are the research projects that really interest you, and work towards prioritizing each semester for them, and then just make sure that you invest your time in that. It seems I mean it sometimes can get overwhelming, but I think if you genuinely like doing the work, it, and if you plan well in advance, it does work out.
Thank you, Misbah. So, Misbah, once you're done with, oh, first of all, can you please tell us what are you planning to study at Oxford and what do you plan to do once you're done with your post-graduation there?
So I'm planning to study the BCL, and I'm also applying for the Masters in Criminology and Criminal Justice. Um, and After that, I mean, eventually, the plan is to come back and work in India. And I've always really liked litigation, and I do sort of want to invest my time in that. I may not necessarily be in going to courts, but also investing in legal policy. So let's see.
All the best to you for that.
Thank
So,
you.
right. So we have one question in chat from Ikra. Since it's a very
Mm.
relevant question at this time, I'm asking it here. So Ikra asks, what does use of talents to the fullest mean? Does it refer to sports and artistic pursuits? What if someone used to do it in school, but now they do it only for themselves and not competitively? And there's also a follow up to that. Could you share your extracurriculars with us?
Um, I think I don't know. I think it should be okay if you do it even otherwise. I'm not sure about this. Um, I think if you're able to say that you've consistently been interested in this and you've used your time in working on an extracurricular activity, I think it should be fine. But as long as you're able to show how, I think that's also important. I used to debate in my undergrad when I was at Stephens, so that was one thing that I did consistently. And in law school, I've been part of the Legal Aid Society, and I've also been doing moots. So I think those are the extracurricular activities that I did.
Okay, thank you so much, Misbah. And I think with that, we'll wrap up this session regarding the Rhodes Scholarship. If you don't have anything else to add, is it okay if we move to the next session, Misbah?
Yeah, I think we can, and then after that, maybe we can do more questions.
Right. At the end, we'll take up more questions. So, one of the questions is that how can we access the portal that you talked about where we can talk to past scholars regarding the Rhodes Scholarship?
I think when the applications open in June is when you will have access to all of that information. So when you register as an applicant, you will have all of that available to you.
Okay. Another question is that please share with us the internships that you did and how did that help you with the application specifically?
I mean, how do I? Okay, so I broadly worked with lawyers and I did work with legal aid organizations. So this meant being involved in litigation, but also documentation of human rights violations and all of those things, and seeing how our documentation can help in the litigation that is already happening, or how it can help in accessing other remedial institutions that exist both in the international and domestic framework. Um, so broadly, these are the two things that I did while I was in undergrad and in postgrad or LLB degree.
Okay, so we have another question from Ayush who asks, could you clarify if getting the scholarship you would be applying, if for getting the scholarship you would be applying through a separate process to Oxford, or do you only apply for the scholarship once you have the admission in Oxford?
No, so that's usually the case with other scholarships, but with the Rhodes Scholarship, you first apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. Once you get it, is when you apply to Oxford. These are two independent procedures, but it's just that once you have the Rhodes Scholarship, then you apply to Oxford and the course that you have. That you want to, but you have to mention your course even when you apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. But the official application process for the course begins after the scholarship.
Okay, we have another question. In light of the abolishing of the 1 year LLM program, do you think it is worth investing in a 2 year LLM if someone wants to pursue litigation?
I don't really know how to answer that question. I think this really depends on your own career plan and your own goal that you've set for yourself. I think maybe it would be good to talk to someone who's doing litigation, who's a practicing lawyer, to help you answer that question. But I'm not sure I can answer that.
Okay, so we have another question which says that what is the benefit of pursuing a master's, which is seen as a more academic degree for someone who is not looking to get into litigation?
Okay, so if you don't want to do litigation, then would it be worthwhile to invest your time in an LLM? Is that the question? Um, I guess I think it becomes more so important to invest your time in an LLM if you're not doing litigation. In fact, I would suggest that if you know that you want to do only litigation, then it's okay if you don't do an LLM. But if you don't want to do litigation and if you want to um, stay in academics, then you most definitely should do an LLM. And also, I mean, not just about the degree, but also what do you want from that LLM is also important. So if there are certain questions of law that you feel you want to have answered before you actually invest your time in doing that particular work, so it's always good to do an LLM in that sense, and then figure out which college has the best program that suits your interests, and then make your application there.
Okay, so Shuktis asks, what are some other scholarships that can help one study at Oxford? How different are the criteria to take admission into Oxford without a scholarship?
Okay, so I don't know much about other scholarships. I know that there is the Commonwealth Scholarship, there is the INLACS Foundation Scholarship, and there is also the Shepherding Scholarship. So I know that these are the three big scholarships that you can apply to. also Oxford itself and the Faculty of Law itself has some scholarships to offer, so it would be worthwhile to invest and do a bit of research in that and see what are the scholarships that the college provides and what are the other scholarships that you can access. How different is it when you apply without a scholarship? Again, I mean, it depends totally on how much of a problem funding is for you and whether it is contingent on and whether your LLM is contingent on having a scholarship. For me, it was absolutely necessary that I had a scholarship to be able to study. So I was working in a way where I knew what is it that I had to do in order to explore that. But if that's not an option for you, if that's not a concern for you, then I mean you'll have to pay for your application fees and then figure out your tuition and your accommodation. So those are the things that otherwise the scholarship funds. But also each scholarship has a different has different funding criteria. So it's good to see that on their website as well. So some might just pay for some might only pay for your tuition, not accommodation. Some might pay both. So it's always so it's good to do a bit of research on that.
Right, Misbah. So, Misbah, we have had questions about litigation and LLM, and generally we see that people think that after an LLM, what is the most viable option is the academia. But amidst all this, do you think a person's chances at getting a corporate job also increase once the person has an LLM? Or is it always better to go into that corporate job as soon as you're out of your college?
Um, so it depends on what you do in your LLM. I think if your LLM is in uh, corporate law or in that field, then it's definitely going to help you get a job in corporate law. But I think even without it, you can get a job. A lot of people go to an LLM after a few years of work experience in corporate law. A few people go directly after law school do their LLM in a field that interests them that falls within the sort of corporate law environment, and then come back and do a job here or maybe find a job there. But those things you'll have to figure out which country you apply to and what are the options of doing a job there.
Right, Misbah. We have another question from okay, we have this question from Mehreen, who asks, how can one look for suitable scholarships online?
Mm, okay, so ideally, just maybe if you're a law student, then it would be good to sort of see what are the and there are a lot of portals that actually do give this information. So if a simple Google search will also help you when you type in scholarships available for law students or for an LLM. And then, I mean, the research is a bit of an investment. You'll have to take time to do that. Figure out the colleges that fit your interests. What are the colleges that actually also would take someone who has done the kind of work that you have done. So it's a bit of both, and then seeing what are the scholarship opportunities in that college, what are the general scholarship opportunities for that country, and whether there are any foundations that give scholarships. So all of that you'll be able to find, and from a simple Google search, and also a lot of law portals are now covering all of this anyway, so it should be easy access.
Right. We have another question from Ayush who says, hi, Misbah. Thank you so much for doing this. My question might seem a little naive, but I really wanted to know that now that you have been selected to be a Rhodes Scholar, what is the further process? And will you be applying for the BCL from the same process as others, or do you get an admission directly once you are a scholar?
So no, you don't get an admission directly. You have to apply independently. But there's just an option that allows you to apply as a Rhodes Scholar, but it's still a separate application process and there's no direct admission as such.
Right. So there is another question. I know you've dealt with this before, but I guess people are a little confused about this. Apart from academics, what else should we focus on?
Okay, so academics is baseline, so that needs to be there. But apart from that, what you do is completely up to you. So broadly, um, extracurricular activities, anything that falls within your interest, debating, music, theater, mooting, anything like that, or art, anything that interests you would be an extracurricular activity. I mean, there's no limit to the things that I can list down, but anything that interests you, which is non-academic, and then the other things would be uh, and then those other two criterias of being a good leader and being committed to service. I think doing work that sort of reflects on that would be good as well. So I can't tell you that you should do this, but it's good to sort of think about what are the things that could fall under those.
Okay, so Shuktis has one question. He asks, could you share with us who you chose to approach for your letters of recommendation and why?
Um, so I chose so out of six, there were four academic and two from my work experience in terms of my internships. I chose them because I'd been associated with them the longest and I had a good relation with them. I knew that they would be able to comment on my work and me the most. So that was how I chose.
All right, Misbah. So, another question. What sort of academic achievement or GPA is a good enough baseline to apply?
I think every college has their own way of marking, so I'm not sure how to answer that. But firstly, it would be whatever is the top grade, or or first division or first distinction or whatever that would be in your marking scheme, and also ensuring that relatively your performance is good. So if even if say your university doesn't score really well and your marks percentage wise would not be very good, but as long as relatively you do really well in your cohort is something that's is important as well.
Thank you, Misbah. So, Misbah, when we talk about the Rhodes Scholarship, one thing that keeps on rising every now and then is the idea of leadership, that a person should have leadership skills. So, what does this mean? Does this mean you have to be in the in the student council of your college, or like what does this exactly mean, and how can you showcase your leadership qualities?
I mean, yes, it could be any of those things. It could be you could be a student council member, you could be the head of a society, you could be the head of some other initiative or organization you've started on your own. Anything that reflects that you have taken charge and led people and are driven by your passions, which sort of led you to do that, I think is is fine. So there's again there's no one answer to this, but anything that reflects good leadership qualities would be.
All right. So, Ikra is asking, can we also include any one high school teacher for LOR with whom we have spent a lot of time?
I think yes, you can if unless it's been really long since you grad. I mean, I know that people who applied after BA have used high school teachers, and otherwise also I think it should be fine. But it would be good to get the thoughts of other scholars as well on this.
Okay, so Misbah, at the end, I would just like to ask you, are there some categorical don'ts that you would like to put forth when one is applying for a Rhodes Scholarship?
Okay, okay. Don't really know, but I think don't. Okay, so don't think that there is a pattern to Rhodes scholars in the sense that if you only do these things, will you be a Rhodes scholar? I think it's really important to see it as a process that allows you to explore your own individual identity and who you are, and whatever you've done, it can be considered good if you are able to tell them why it's good. So don't fall in the trap of, okay, I've put X, Y, Z as a checklist and I've marked those things, I'm good to go. It may not necessarily work in that sense. Um, but at the same time, there are some base things that also need to be there. So make sure that you do well academically, that you score well, because that's the sort of entry to the scholarship. So don't think that academics is not important. It is. So just two things, I think, maybe.
Okay, thank you. Oh, luckily we have more questions here. So Akshat is asking, if I'm not very from a very good law school and want to pursue LLM from abroad, what should I do because normal government colleges are not that much recognized and do not provide good internships?
Hmm. I think uh, I don't think it necessarily matters which college you're from, insofar as you're able to show that irrespective of the name of the college, you've been able to perform well and you've been doing the work that interested you and have invested your time in that. So, if you've done well academically in your own law school and you've done internships with people who have interested you, whose work inspires you, if you've done things that generally is considered good in your own perspective, I think that's okay. And at the end of the day, it's about your journey and your identity and what you've sort of taken away from it. I don't think it would matter as much in terms of just the name of your college, if you're able to show other things about yourself.
We have another question which says that looking at the current judicial attitude, or generally looking at the manner in which laws are being passed, like the Love Jihad ordinance, etc., how do you think that Muslims would want to take up law as a career?
I think it becomes more so important in such a situation for Muslims to take up law as a career option, because how do you know this is a problem unless you actually invest your time in identifying the problem and then working on making it better? So why is love jihad a problem, or why are extraordinary laws that target certain identities wrong? I think you need to have that knowledge and education on that subject matter in order for you to be able to critique that and to actually do something about that criticism. And as I was saying before, also that a lot of what is happening now is in the language of legality, which is why it's important for us to also counter it in the language of legality, which can only happen if we invest our time and energies in law and then working on research or litigation in those spaces. So whether it's just writing on love jihad or actually doing litigation and work for those who are incriminated, so all of that is important.
Thank you, Misbah. I think that's all. We don't have any other question. Is there anything else that you want to say here? Any message that you want to give to our participants or the ones who would be listening to this
Oh no.
recording?
Okay, I don't know. Okay, so I just want to say that, okay, first of all, I hope that everybody uses this as a starting point to doing whatever um, they've been wanting to do. I think so I was reading this somewhere that people with minority identities face the most amount of imposter syndrome, and this is something that I feel is really important for us to get over. Is that it doesn't matter whatever is happening around us. It's okay. You need to be confident about yourself, who you are, the work that you've done, and just invest in all of the opportunities that come your way. So don't think that something is unattainable just because you've not seen people do well who have your identity doing well in that space. I think just utilize whatever is in front of you and just do the best that you can. And also, very importantly, give back to the community, give back to ensuring that the situations are made better for those who aren't in better positions as you've otherwise occupied. So even if you do whatever you do, whatever success that you attain, make sure that you use that to help others and use that to give back. I think that's about it. And good luck with everyone who applies. You can always get in touch with me personally if there's anything that you want help with. I'll try to help as much as I can.
Thank you so much, Misbah. It was amazing having you here, and I'm sure everybody would have enjoyed this thing. And we wish you all the luck from ALEM. And once again, thank you for being here. It
Thank
was an
you.
amazing webinar.
Thank you for having me and good luck to Alam. And I hope you all continue to do the amazing work. More power to all of you.
Thank you so much. And we hope to see you back in India after you're done with your Rhodes Scholarship and practicing here.
All right.
Okay.
Great.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
so
All right.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.